Good morning. I'm Jim Peters. My pronouns are he and him. I'm a member of the worship committee, and it's my pleasure to welcome one and all to this in-person and online service of the Unitarian Society of New Haven. At USNH, the values we hold in common are justice, connection, generosity, compassion, and spirituality. If you're new or nearly new to this community, a special welcome to you and an invitation to join us for fellowship and refreshment in the social hall following the service. In the back of the social hall is the connection team table, and they'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you for being here this morning. I have a few announcements to offer. As always, please read through the order of service and refer to the weekly and monthly USNH office emails for a more complete presentation of everything that's happening around here. I'd first just like to welcome and thank our musical soloist and composer, Nathan Pollock, for being with us this morning and performing so beautifully. A few other announcements. There will be an adult religious education discussion at noon today in room 209 upstairs that way. Today is the first day of the Women of Wisdom class from 12 to 2 p.m. Becky Sandman and Kathy Haskins will be leading, and walk-ins are welcome. Today is the last chance to sign up in person for a USNH potluck. Look for Becky Friedman in the social hall. Her table's just by the door there after the service, and I think she's over here right now in the mask section. You can visit with her to sign up. You may also check the newsletter for a link to register online no later than tomorrow. Lastly, we'd like to give a shout out to the kids service team who met yesterday to clean up Criscolo Park and boat launch in New Haven. The team collected 35 bags of garbage and 5 bags of recyclables, which otherwise would have been likely washed into the Quinnipiac River and Long Island Sound. So good for them. Good for them. My friends, each week someone stands where I'm standing and asks you to give as generously as you can to support the work of this community. Now, if you're like me, especially these last weeks, it's impossible to open my phone or email and not see an ever-lengthening list of people asking for support. Here, we try to just ask once a week and then a little bit more during the spring stewardship drive. But just because we don't ask every day doesn't mean the needs aren't ongoing. If you can, please consider donating via the number on your order of service, or by seeing an usher on the way out of the service, or by mailing a check here to 700 Hartford Turnpike in Hamden. In whatever amount you can support USNH, know that your generosity is deeply appreciated. And lastly, we hold space each week to hold up the joys and sorrows of this beloved community, in the belief that our sadnesses can be eased in the sharing of them, and also that our celebrations are magnified when we name them to each other. I'm happy to share the joy that Jackie Trimble Shapiro is recovering in hospital after a successful surgical procedure. When we wish her a speedy and full recovery. Now, while we've received no reports of sorrows within our community, I would ask us to hold in our hearts those whose lives have been impacted by Hurricane Helene. And I'd also wish to remember those who are suffering and at risk in all sides of the conflicts in the Middle East. And now, as I invite Sunny to the pulpit to lead us in our call to worship and chalice lighting, I invite us all to silence our devices and together to settle into worship this morning.
Good morning. I'm Sunny, the ministerial intern here at USNH. My pronouns are she and her. I call us to worship, and we light the chalice today with words from Reinhold Niebuhr. Nothing worth doing is completed in our lifetime. Therefore, we are saved by hope. Nothing true or beautiful or good makes complete sense in any immediate context of history. Therefore, we are saved by faith. Nothing we do, however virtuous, can be accomplished alone. Therefore, we are saved by love. As we open this sacred space of worship, may we rest today and even beyond in hope, in faith, and in love. And now I invite you to sing our opening hymn, number 1010 in your teal hymnal, We Give Thanks, Rising in Body or Spirit. And Jesse, I hope you can help me because I don't, this one is not one I'm familiar with.
For this time we Good morning. My name is Jesse Greist. I'm the Director of Lifespan Religious Education. I have a story I would like to share with you this morning. In a town, in a state, in a country, there were people. This town and these people had a wide canyon with a river running through the bottom of it that went straight through the middle of their town. This river ran swiftly, and it was decided that in the interest of having some housing on the other side of the river, because the side where the people lived, they were going to build a bridge. But the people who had the resources to build the bridge decided that that bridge was going to only be able to be used by them. How shall we decide who gets to use the bridge and who does not? Well, it was decided that they would do it by examining everyone's heel. Everyone had to look, and the people were divided into two groups. There was the well-heeled and the unhealed. And only the well-heeled were allowed to use this bridge. And for years, the well-heeled went freely across the bridge and built their homes and McMansions on the other side of the river, while the town continued to exist on the original side of the river. As things would have it, as luck would have it, after years and years, the bridge began to crack and crumble. And as they started to decide, what are we going to do about this? How are we going to fix this bridge? Something was discovered. The only people that knew how to fix the bridge were the unhealed. The well-heeled had lived so well that they did not know how to fix the bridge. So they called a meeting and they said, "Listen, you unhealed folks, we need you to fix the bridge." And the unhealed said, "Just one moment," and they held a huddle. And they came back and said, "We will gladly fix the bridge for you, but with one little condition. We would like to be able to move across it. We would like to be invited to move across it." The well-heeled gasped, looked around. They examined their signs that said that they were welcoming. And they spoke amongst themselves and eventually came back and said, "I'm sorry, that is a bridge too far. We cannot go there." And so the bridge continued to crumble and crack until one day it fell into the river and washed away. What do we do? How do we get to the other side of the river? I've got it. We'll make a ferry. So the resources were provided, a ferry was built, and the ferry would only carry the well-heeled across the river. Well, years went by, and after a while, the ferry began to show the signs of disrepair. It ran slower, its engines clunked and clanked, and guess what? The only people who knew how to fix the ferry were once again the unhealed. Another meeting happened, and once again the well-heeled begged and promised a decent wage to those who would fix the ferry. But again, they said, "We will fix your ferry for you, but all we ask is that we be allowed to ride it side by side. Once again, the well-heeled said no, and the ferry fell into disrepair, and eventually sank to the bottom of the river. Nowadays in this town, there is no way across the divide. Many people wring their hands, shake their heads, and say, "I wish there was a way to bridge the divide." Some of us might figure out a way. Maybe some people know how to swim. But I'm actually going to leave the rest of this story to you in your capable hands and minds. Because whatever gets built next, whatever happens next, the question remains, how can we unite the unhealed, the well-heeled, the human being with our greatest aspirations? I would like to invite any young people, children at this time, to come with me to their classrooms and let us sing them on their way with "Go Now in Peace." Please lift your voices with me and let's sing them out to their classes. Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the spirit of love surround you everywhere, everywhere. As Unitarian Universalists, we don't have to believe the same things. In fact, it's pretty clear we don't all believe the same things, but we are no less a beloved community because of that truth. Instead, we commit to holding and nurturing a space where we can work out our beliefs and our commitments as free thinkers and actors. For me, our covenantal commitments are what make that space possible in the midst of our many differences. It's the bedrock of my identity as a UU. Each week we recite together a brief version of our covenant. I encourage you to read the whole covenant on our website. And while the following words express our intentions in writing, our true covenant lives and breathes in our actions. So friends, please join me now in reciting the words that appear in the order of service or in the chat and the live stream, which will be followed by a period of silence and Bill playing us out of silence. We covenant together to create and nurture a culture of respect and kindness, and to engage in the spiritual and everyday practice of loving more generously. To this end, we will strive to be open, value differences, listen deeply, use kind language, speak our truths, work with conflict, and seek humor and joy.
Good morning. My name is Reverend Stephen Kendrick, and my pronouns are he and his and him. We hold this morning our fellow citizens who are bearing the burden of a fantastically strong hurricane that came in, and a lot of deaths, a lot of damage, which is actually still unfolding. So we hold them in our hearts today, as well as the ever-expanding conflict in the Middle East. It's hard to believe that in a place where the beckoning of peace has cut across hundreds and hundreds of years, that we behold such an ongoing conflict. May peace somehow break out soon. It's a hard and a terrible thing to watch. This morning's reading is not one that I came up with. I mentioned as I was going out the door last week to Laura Fawcett that I was going to be preaching on repairs of the breach, and she immediately sent me two unbelievably great poems, and I appreciate that. That's why it's nice to be part of a congregation that's smarter than you are. So thank you. Thank you, Laura. This is a poem by Stuart Kassenbaum called Holding the Light. Gather up whatever is glittering in the gutter, whatever has tumbled in the waves or fallen in flames out of the sky. For it's not only our hearts that are broken, but the heart of the world as well. Stitch it back together. Make a place where the day speaks to the night and the earth speaks to the sky. Whether we created God or God created us, it all comes down to this. In our imperfect world, we are meant to repair and stitch together what beauty there is. Stitch it with compassion and wire. See how everything we have made gathers the light inside itself and overflows a blessing. And now this morning's anthem.
All right, I'm Christopher Grundy, the Director of Music here at USNH, and although this anthem needs no introduction to this congregation, we do need your help. In the last verse, I'd like you all to sing along. I'll let you know when to come in, and it's, I'm going to put on my starry crown. That's all you need to note.
Down by
1 month after Robert E. Lee's surrender to U.S. Grant at Appomattox, Frederick Douglass was asked to speak to the American Anti-Slavery Society, which had gathered to vote itself out of existence. This is what he said. He mused that slavery, quote, has been called by a great many names, and it will call itself by yet another name. And you and I, and all of us had better wait and see what new form this old monster will assume, and what new skin this old snake will come forth next. Well, he wasn't wrong about that, was he? Not that we haven't been here before. We have, and we should have learned much more than we did at every stage of our tragic passing to this time, this place, this election season. It hurts to relive history that was not only bloody but traumatic. But here we go. On January 6th, for the very first time, Confederate flags were traipsed through the Capitol itself. We live in astonishing and at times heart-rending times of polarization. We read from the prophets here. I'm going to give you 2 words of prophecy. First, it goes like this. If we are to have another civil war, I predict the dividing line will not be Mason and Dixon, but between patriotism and intelligence on one side, superstition, authority, and ignorance on the other. What great prophet said that? Well, that was U.S. Grant in 1875. And a bit before that, from Isaiah 58, and your ancient ruins shall be rebuilt. You shall raise up the foundations of many generations. You shall be called repairers of the breach, the restorer of streets to dwell in. Now, the word breach is from a Jewish word, prenz, meaning a tear, a rendering, a break. And if you want to get all sociological, it's about strife, it's about disruption, it's about breaking of relations, living in a broken state. And who is going to be the repairer? The Hebrew word is gadnar, to wall in or to fence together. In other words, a mason who repairs the broken places. Really, just stitch it all back together, as student Kassenbaum said. So that's what I'm talking about today. An ancient prophecy. But prophecy is never given to us as a preordained thing. Prophets only speak to us not of what will be, but what might be if we do not change our direction. Well, I don't need to spend another moment in this sermon talking about or establishing if there is polarization in our society, because we know it, we feel it, and it hurts. And I think, I've been thinking about this for weeks in the sermons that I've been preparing that will lead us up into Election Day and beyond. And I think for me, there are 2 main sources of the breach. The first is the capacity of the human being to see those in opposition as somehow less than human. The author of the Project 2025 book, his book was delayed publication, but the current vice presidential candidate for the Republican Party wrote the foreword, and the book was entitled Unhuman. Not inhuman, unhuman. There are people in this sanctuary who fought in World War II. They're keenly aware of what it means in the human heart when we see those other human beings as somehow unhuman. When on the political stage words like vermin are used for migrants or for just opponents, of quote, poisoning the blood of our country. That kind of breach is massive. It's an abyss, really. And we must not fall into it. And the other source of the breach, I think, is a growing incapacity to trust. And that's really what this sermon's about. I'll talk more about the other next week. If you break trust in institutions, then you're a long way towards chaos. And if you have enough chaos, then you're a long way towards authoritarianism. Trust in the presidency since 1972 has declined from 52% to 23%. In the media, 39% to 18%. Congress, 42% to 7%, and I'm surprised it's that high. Public schools, 58% to 28%. You break the institutions, and this works for you. But what ultimately does work is breaking our trust in each other. Simple trust. The kind of trust that makes you see the person as inhuman, as unhuman. And if we want to become repairers of the breach, and this is what our faith asks us to do, we can't just be soft-hearted or soft-brained about it. We have to engage it in a gritty, realistic, determined manner. Because ultimately, if we're going to do this work of years, or generations really, it is a long-run process, moving past and above times of heartache, times of temptation to despair, and to surrender to lassitude, to just say it doesn't matter. I give up. What I hope and dream doesn't matter. About a month ago, I was in Chicago and in a lovely bookstore, and I saw a book called Hope for Cynics by Jamil Zaki. And I bought it thinking, hey, I'm going to give it to Sonny for Christmas. But it turned out I was actually buying it for myself. Because I'm really talking about hope here, about how hope works across time. You can't become a repairer of the breach if you cannot sustain a sense of hope. And if I'm honest with you, and I hope that I always am, that's really hard. But it's also completely, utterly necessary to do the work that we've been asked to do, and that our faith asks us to do, implores us to do. The entire denomination went through a long process over the last several years for our new purposes, sources of our lifeblood, our principles. And there's a phrase in there of liberating love. And there's a phrase that's in calligraphy right in our hallway there as you enter, where it talks about the worth and dignity of every person. You know you've entered the spiritual realm when what's being asked of you is really hard. If this stuff were easy, it wouldn't matter. But it's really hard. Sometimes I think the way that we know that we're being asked to do something powerfully, spiritually important is, our first thought is, I don't want to do that. It makes my life difficult and complicated. It asks a lot of me. And to be moving past both optimism and despair both is to rise into the realm of hope. Hope is not a sentiment at all. It is a rugged, spiritual inner switch that allows us to turn on our life energy so that we can do the work that we've been asked to do, so that we can struggle against things that we know are not right. Hope got Mandela through decades of imprisonment, not the facts or the bars in front of his face. Hope is switched on because we turn towards the future. And we resolutely stay there, attuned and ready. Hope is precisely that thing that you and I are going to need, whether things go nearly right or nearly calamitous in some 30 days. Hope is not about results as much as turning our face, heart, and hands, for good or ill, to the future that is coming at us. Hope sustains us when things are tough, and I hope that they can also humble us when things go well. Most of all, it fights to overcome cynicism, serene overconfidence, and despair. Nothing in our faith is easy. To be repairers of the breach is hard work. And to do that work in the short term is to take seriously your capacity for focused energy. We do not have time for despair. That is an indulgence. We don't have time to entertain false hope either, but to get gritty, to get real. I can't believe we have to do this all again kind of hope. Prophets of moral clarity and decency, and I would submit sanity, have been telling us generation upon generation that this work is in fact never finished, and that the breach will not repair itself. In the short term, the work on the breach is to not allow us to be outworked, outthought, outspent, and browbeat into inaction. When issues of mass deportation are put right in front of our face, and I'll talk more about this next week, when it's right there in front of our face, we just have to take it seriously. We have to take it literally. We have to understand what's at stake. And in the short term, we must deny them those kind of victories, or we just can't live with ourselves. But that's not where our faith leaves us. Far from it. If defeating our fellow citizens at the breach was all that was important, you don't need to be sitting in a sanctuary this morning. A lot more is being asked of us. You don't need to take your injunction to uphold and support liberating love seriously to understand that. We are being asked, and sometimes it literally overwhelms me, to see the worth and dignity of every person. When you see people braying and laughing and demeaning other human beings. It's very hard to do that. But our faith asks us to do it. And to do it sincerely, and to do it in a sustained basis. To take it seriously. L.A. Stevenson was once asked, in the midst of his ongoing loss to Eisenhower, someone shouted out at him at a train stop, "You got the vote of every thinking person in America." And Stevenson stopped the train and replied, "Madam, I'm going to need a majority." And when we see the depths of where so many of our citizens want to descend to, are willing to descend to, we think, well, we can revise that you thing. But we are being asked to somehow lift our society and ourselves, but to lift our society up to community and compassion and equality. And a little voice says, "Oh, we may need more than that." We will need the long-term repairs of the breach work, which again is not sentiment, but actual real-life energy within us to do the slow, at times aching work of recommitment to the soul of our common mission, which is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The liberal faith does not belong to liberals and to progressives. It belongs to all of us, because we're all human. And we all need an opportunity to thrive and to live lives of fulfillment and decency. That's not a hope. It is the hope that burns in every one of us, though it can easily be obscured in heated political times and even cast aside in times of crisis. Our faith tells us this hope must be abiding. It must be operative. It must be true. That we can never obscure the humanity of people, even when they're working against values that we hold dear. Rebecca Solnit, who is, I think, one of the best writers in America, says hope is not a lottery ticket that you sit on the sofa and clutch, feeling lucky. Hope is an axe you use to break down doors in an emergency. That's the kind of hope we're talking about today. That's the only thing that can repair the breach. Long-term, active hope. And as I said, what we're living through is actually, if we take a good, long perspective, is a very long struggle. There's absolutely, sadly, nothing new here. Annette Gordon Reed, the discoverer of Jefferson's families, both white and black, writes this: "The American experiment does not have to work. Empires and nations rise and fall. But while I am an historian, I am also an American. And in thinking about the country, I experience a classic split between my head and my heart. Intellectually, I know that there's no reason at all to believe in any particular direction of the American future. As we have seen and been reminded daily to an absolutely exhausting degree, anything can happen. But at the same time, in my heart, I have hoped. I've wanted to believe that the country that started with disposition of native peoples and slavery and dedication to white supremacy, it can live up to a more idealistic aspiration of its founding. And that vision of the future has been challenged of late, but as in years past, many people who share this vision have mobilized in support of it. And I suppose that is the most that can be hoped for, because that kind of struggle is the only way better futures can be made. And I think she's right. And in that struggle, perhaps the hardest aspect is simple connection, civil conversation, and getting through Thanksgiving dinner. Jamil Zadok says in his book, Hope for Cynics, that we must somehow, and it's really hard, he understands that, it's really hard, but we have to start trusting in human nature itself, that people are basically good, that they can be trusted to do the right thing. Now, we sometimes doubt that. I sometimes am prey to doubting that. I admit it. But Hemingway said the best way to find out if you can trust somebody is to trust them. And in doing that, in fact, we are very seldom disappointed. So that also takes a profound faith for us, a faith that I believe I need more than now and then to shore me up, to remind me of the value of trust, simple, everyday trust. It tells me to try and to try again, not in any naive way, but in a sincere, hopeful stance to the future. We cannot entertain the illusion that we can be aloof or arrogant. That's not what we should ever be about. I'm in a men's group where about a third of the group are, I think, Trumpies. I've been tempted to leave the group, but I've stuck with it, and I'm glad I have. It's hard, but it's really worth it. The friendships are worth it. It's one of the few places I know of that I can actually talk to people past this breach. 59% of Americans say it's not worth the effort to talk to those that they disagree with. 59%. But Jamil Zaka's social experiment at Stanford, what he calls social talking, reveals something startling. When they brought together people of vast differences who had no inclination to talk to people across the divide, at the end of the month, virtually 100% expressed surprise and refreshment, and they had stuck with it as well. And he said that there were 4 basic rules that guided whatever happened in that fortuitous happy experiment. The first is that good disagreeers ask questions instead of make statements. Second, they work to get underneath people's opinions to get to their stories. I don't know whether anyone's seen the movie made from Isabel Wilkerson's book Caste, but the movie's great, and it's a fictionalized version of what Isabel Wilkerson went through in writing the book. And there's a scene where her basement floods, and a plumber shows up in a red hat, and it ain't Santa. And she can tell that he does not want to be in the same room with a black woman. She can just tell. And he's really reluctant to take on the job, but she just keeps trying to engage him. And eventually it turns out, she says, I lost my mother this year too. And the plumber looks up at her, and they exchange a glance, no words are said. He says, I'll do the job. A human connection has been made because a story of loss of humanity has been shared. 3, if you spot common ground, name it. Name it. And lastly, when unsure, say that you're unsure instead of pretending to be confident. The anger and bitterness among and between us, Jamil says is like a highly contagious virus. And I think he's right. He says outrage is contagious, but so is curiosity and humanity. Abraham Lincoln, at the start of the Civil War, said in his first inaugural address, "We are not enemies, but friends." And in the short term, this repair of the breach prosecuted the war. And in the process, 8 million souls were released from slavery. At the end of the war, in the second inaugural, he said, "With malice towards none and charity for all." In the long run, he never allowed himself, even in the midst of violence, he never allowed himself to surrender trust in others. He refused to commit to anything other than reconciliation, to repair the breach. And I conclude today, as I end hour. Don't leave. Timothy Schneider, at the very conclusion of his new book on freedom, is sitting with his daughter in a downtown eatery in New Haven, Claire's. And he writes of looking at his daughter's face, "My kids have a chance. We all do. The world could ever be so much better." And as I look at my daughter's smiling face, I think of what I can leave behind. Our problem is not the world. Our problem is us. And so we can solve it. We can be free. If we see what freedom is, we can see creativity in the past, possibility in the present, and liberty in the future. We can recognize one another, create a good government, and make our own luck. And he ends by quoting Simone Weil. "We live in a world where people can expect miracles only from themselves." He says we can seize our chance. It is our last one, but it is a good one. And he's right. You and I have been tasked with the responsibility of being repairers of the breach. It's not an easy job. It may last far past our lifetimes, but our faith asks this of us. And because I believe in these values of decency, of fulfillment, of human equality, I like doing the work with you, all of us, together. Amen. In 148, let freedom span both east and west. 148. Span both east and west, and love both I invite forward Sunny to read you the words as we extinguish our chalice, and Jim extinguishes.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
And now may peace, which passes all understanding, keep your hearts and minds in the knowledge of love until we meet again. Amen.
I'm glad you're